In November 2024, America made its choice. Donald Trump is back. But this isn't just a political comeback. It's the beginning of a seismic shift for the United States and its role on the global stage. You might be wondering, what does this mean for you, for the world, for the future of U.S. global alliances? Trump's return isn't simply about reclaiming power. This is a redefined vision of how America will lead in the coming years. With a second term on the horizon, Trump is poised to reshape the way the U.S. interacts with the world. It's a bold new chapter for the United States and its relationships with its allies and adversaries alike. Did you ever think we'd be here again? Trump back in power, but this time, with 4 years of experience and a dynamic team behind him, Trump's second term could change the way the U.S. operates globally, and it might change things for you too. So, what happens next? How will Trump's second term affect the world's power dynamics? Will his leadership style evolve, or will it remain just as unpredictable? What will this mean for you and for America's place in the world? Let's break it down. Before we look ahead to Trump's second term, let's first understand what happened in his first term and why it still matters today. You may have strong opinions about him, but regardless of where you stand, Trump's first term was a game changer in American foreign policy. Trump entered the White House in 2016 as an outsider. No political experience, but a businessman who promised to bring a no-nonsense, deal-making approach to Washington. What was this approach meant to serve? It was meant for people like you, Americans who felt left behind by globalization, long-standing foreign entanglements, and trade deals that didn't seem to benefit American workers. Trump wasn't afraid to shake things up. He didn't want to keep the status quo. He wanted to redefine it. But what did he actually achieve in those first 4 years? Let's take a closer look. In 2017, Trump shocked the world by pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. To many, it seemed like a reckless move. But for Trump, it was about putting American businesses first. He argued that the deal was unfair to the U.S., particularly when countries like China and India had much less stringent requirements. Critics called it irresponsible, while his supporters hailed it as a win for U.S. sovereignty. You might think, what does this have to do with me? Well, it's not just about the environment. It's about asserting that the U.S. will no longer be held to international agreements that don't benefit its people. This wasn't a decision made lightly. It sent a clear message that America would prioritize its own interests first, even if that meant walking away from global agreements. So, what does this mean for the future? Will Trump's second term continue to see America distancing itself from international climate agreements, or will he shift toward a more collaborative model with global leaders? You'll want to keep an eye on this. Next up, renegotiating NAFTA into the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. For many, NAFTA had long been a source of frustration, particularly for American workers in industries like manufacturing. Trump wasn't the first to criticize NAFTA, but he was the first to take action. The USMCA addressed long-standing grievances by focusing on labor rights, digital trade, and intellectual property, areas that were often overlooked in the original NAFTA deal. You might wonder, what does this really mean for me? Well, if you were in a manufacturing job or any industry affected by trade, the USMCA was a step toward fairer practices. For many, it meant a playing field that was more level for U.S. workers, securing better access to markets and ensuring that companies would have to play by the U.S.'s rules. As Trump heads into a second term, the question remains, how will these new trade agreements shape your job market? Will more industries benefit from fairer trade policies, or will the U.S. look to negotiate even better terms with other global players? Trump's challenge to NATO allies about defense spending became one of the most talked about moments of his first term. For decades, the U.S. had shouldered a disproportionate burden for NATO's defense budget, and Trump made it clear that this would no longer stand. Europe, he argued, needed to step up. At the time, his demands were unpopular with European leaders. But you know what? It worked. Several NATO countries increased their defense budgets, which meant less of a financial burden on the US and a more balanced distribution of military responsibility. You might ask yourself, why should I care about this? Well, strengthening NATO's ability to respond to emerging threats like Russian aggression directly impacts global security. As Trump moves into a second term, the question is, will NATO become more self-sufficient, or will Europe once again fall short in meeting its obligations? Perhaps one of the most defining moments of Trump's first term was his role in brokering the Abraham Accords, a historic peace agreement that normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations, including the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco. This wasn't just a peace deal, it was a redefining of alliances in the Middle East. Trump's approach to diplomacy broke away from traditional thinking, focusing not just on resolving conflicts but creating new opportunities for cooperation. So why does this matter? Well, imagine a Middle East where economic and security cooperation takes precedence over conflict. Less U.S. military intervention, more regional stability. Could this shift last in Trump's second term, or will tensions flare again? Trump's first term was full of bold moves, some of which paid off, and others that raised eyebrows. But as we look to his second term, the question remains, will his leadership continue on this trajectory? Or will his unpredictability create more challenges in U.S. alliances? As Trump heads into his second term, the world has dramatically shifted. We're facing new global challenges, the rise of China, increasing tensions in Europe, and new security threats emerging every day. Trump's vision for America's role on the global stage will reflect these changes. Instead of focusing solely on military power, Trump's second term is likely to emphasize efficiency, shared responsibility, and strategic competition. The U.S. will need to be smarter, not just stronger. Imagine a world where NATO is leaner, faster, and more efficient. A world where the Indo-Pacific is an epicenter of security and innovation. A Middle East where economic collaboration takes precedence over conflict. Sound ambitious? That's exactly the point. NATO will continue to be central to U.S. foreign policy. However, Trump's second term is likely to bring more significant changes to the alliance. He's already pushed for European nations to take on more responsibility, but now it's time for NATO to evolve into a more modern and agile alliance. The U.S. will remain a central player, but Trump will push for Europe to take more autonomy in defending its own territory. As cyber threats, disinformation, and hybrid conflicts become more pressing, NATO will need to adapt to new security challenges. So what does this mean for you? It could mean less U.S. military presence in Europe and a more self-reliant NATO, but it will also require greater contributions from European countries. Will this modernized NATO improve global security, or will it expose the cracks within the alliance? China's rise is one of the most pressing challenges for the U.S. in the 21st century. During his first term, Trump used tariffs and trade wars to try and counter Beijing's growing influence. But in his second term, Trump's focus will likely shift toward building stronger coalitions with like-minded nations, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. These countries, like Japan, India, South Korea, and Australia, share concerns over China's rise and will become even more important in Trump's second term. But this isn't just about military alliances. It's about trade, technology, and global influence. How will Trump counter China's Belt and Road Initiative? By promoting a more transparent and sustainable alternative for developing nations, one that aligns with American values of fairness and innovation. Think of it as a high-stakes game of chess. The U.S. and China are vying for global dominance. But instead of pawns and queens, the pieces on the board are nations, trade routes, and new technologies. The Abraham Accords were just the beginning. Under Trump's second term, the U.S. could expand these peace agreements to include more countries in the Middle East. Trump's goal isn't just to maintain peace, but to foster a region where economic collaboration takes the spotlight. A Middle East less reliant on U.S. military presence and more focused on trade, development, and innovation? That could be the legacy of Trump's second term. But could it work? Could this new dynamic create lasting peace, or will it expose new vulnerabilities? Trump's second term will focus on three key areas: energy independence, technological innovation, and coalition diplomacy. Together, these pillars will redefine America's place in the world. In his first term, Trump made the U.S. a net exporter of oil and gas. But now, his second term will likely expand to focus on renewable energy. With advisors like Elon Musk, Trump could push for advancements in solar, wind, and nuclear energy. This isn't just about reducing dependence on foreign oil. It's about positioning the U.S. as a leader in the global clean energy transition, one that could reshape global markets. Could this balance of traditional energy sources and renewables make the U.S. a global energy powerhouse? Trump's second term could mark a shift away from the unilateralism of his first term. With strategic thinkers like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., his administration might focus on building global coalitions to address shared challenges like climate change, trade, and health crises. The goal? To create a more balanced global order where the U.S. leads, not through dominance, but through collaboration and mutual benefit. Trump's return to the White House isn't just another political chapter. It's a chance to redefine global alliances, reignite diplomacy, and create new pathways to global prosperity. With his refined vision, seasoned leadership, and a dynamic team by his side, Trump's second term could reshape U.S. alliances and redefine the global order for years to come. What do you think? Will Trump's second term create a stronger, fairer world, or will these changes face obstacles we haven't yet foreseen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth looks at global politics.